So this week I'll be potting on Rudbeckia, I'll be sowing beans, and I'm going to be doing some refreshing in the garden. So I'll join you over in the chillutery. Just need to grab some bits and pieces because I'm going to be tidying up the planter in the chillutery today. Come on. The wind is picking up, so I've got a few little bits and pieces I grabbed from the garden centre that were having a sale, and some of the Obrisia that I've grown, and they're going in this planter here. It's looking a lot better than it did a couple of years ago when I last complained about this. And back then, Pammy from the Garden of Whedon recommended trying out one of these solar irrigation systems just to see if it would help. And I think it really does make a difference. So you can see we've got a lot of stuff here that's looking brilliant. And this is because it's all getting watered and fed on a regular basis. Now there's no controller on it, so there are days where it just waters it too much, so we're having to run in and out and deal with that. But I think generally it's working. However, there are always going to be plants, you can see here like these Obrisia, that we find this always happens, the tops of them always just die back, and it's this new growth at the front that really looks great. So I'm actually going to pull some bits and bobs out that look scraggly like that. Also, we have these Semper Vivum all over. I'm going to take these out and I'm going to move them somewhere else because it's nesting season for our little blackbirds, and unfortunately the wee female blackbird comes and digs around looking for food basically, and they keep knocking these out because they're quite shallow rooted. So I'm going to move them. And this little lemon fizz here, you can see it looks really scraggly and awful, but there's lots of new growth down at the base, so I'm actually just going to give it a hard prune and let it come back. But generally that's it. It's just about giving everything a wee tidy up, replacing any plants that need replaced, topping up the compost like you would do anywhere. It's just container gardening, but upwards. Quite often what we're getting, I don't know if you can hear me because Kate's cutting the lawn, but quite often little bits of plant have dropped underneath and they've rooted in other pockets. So I didn't plant this vinca here, it's come from above. Just totally love these. I may take some trimmings, like just trim this down, neaten it up, and I may use it as cuttings and grow some more. So this is my little lemon fizz that I love. And that's what he looks like when he's really going for it and looking awesome. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to be really brutal. I'm going to go right in there, because there's all this new stuff coming up, and that's what I want to encourage. It looks horrendous, but that, in early spring, that pruning is going to just tell this little guy to go for it and get the new shoots out. And before long, he's going to look fantastic. This is the hard bit. It's great to see these with the flowers, but there's an awful lot of dead stuff here. So I'm going to take them out. Like I say, I've grown on some little Obrisia that I'll put in this spot, but it does mean it's going to look really bare. But I've got this one, which is the one I grew last year, and this one's not too bad. So it's not the end of the world. It's always that thing of placing the plants. Don't plant things. Put the pots where you're wanting them to go and then stop and have a think. Now, I also have the little drip irrigation things. I have different amounts of nozzles and in different positions in each of the pallet sort of areas, because obviously we put them in at a time when there were plants there and we did it to suit those plants. I maybe don't want to put a sedum in where there's two of these drips, because the sedums don't want as much water as maybe an aubrietia might. So I'm also careful of thinking about that as well. So you saw I moved two around there. So this is another sedum. This is dragon's blood. But that's the beauty of standing, thinking, having a look. If I had just planted, too late. But if I'm happy, I can start planting up. So I'm just taking out any root mass from the previous plants. A little bit of fresh compost in here. Now, the big problem I had is the gaps for planting in is actually really small, which is why I had such issues. So it doesn't take a lot of new compost at all. That's some of my homegrown aubrietia. Now the problem with these aubrietia, this type die back completely over winter, but they will come back again the next year, and that's what's happened with these guys. But it does mean it's bare in winter. There's another type of aubrietia, and we've got it in the Tower of Flowers, the new green stock that's in the centre of the lawn, so I'll show you that. Just a case of digging out any of the old root ball from the old plants and taking out some of the old compost, because we're going to replace it with nice new stuff. Water and get the stones back, and that's it done for now. It's just a little refresh. It's going to look awesome come July, August. So as you guys can see, we're now at what I like to call DEFCON level. Oh my god, the world is ending. Basically what that means is, Gloriosa, like everyone else, it feels like I've sown too many seeds, I've not got space, what am I going to do? And I think we all feel like this. But the truth is, it'll be fine. A lot of the things that are in here will actually go out into the little throw together plastic greenhouse / cold frame thing. And the only things that will need to stay in here will be the warmer crops and the smaller things. So these are getting a bit of tough love. So basically, what I do now, because I've still got seeds to sow, even though hands up if you're sick of seed sowing. I'm sick of me sowing seeds. I'm sick of seeing other people sowing seeds. It's just like, oh, boring. But I've got beans to sow. So these guys, I'm thinking they've had their time in the little tray. I'm going to put them in pots, and the pots will take up slightly less space than the 2 trays. So that's my plan for just now. So that was me making sure I had enough labels, because you guys know I have an issue with labels. The issue being I forget them. So now everything is wonky in here right now. We had a bit of a thing when we were working at the weekend, and I've now got potting mix in the box that says compost, and vermiculite in the box that says potting mix, and vermiculite in the box that says vermiculite. And the reason being, I'll show you. 2 seconds. Right. In fact, I'll just leave the lid off. The reason being, dahlias are all potted up, and of course I had stored these in the attic over winter in vermiculite. So all that vermiculite they were stored in is now in the box. And I'm happy to say all of my dahlias survived in storage in the attic in vermiculite, which is on one hand, hurrah, a cause for celebration, but on the other hand, a bit of a because I kind of was relying on some of them dying. Well, relying, that's not a good way to put it, Eli. Not relying, I assumed I would lose some, because I always do, and I haven't. So I've got more dahlias than I've got places to put them, so I've had to give half a dozen to a neighbour who is brilliant. We've got a lovely neighbour, Linda, and we end up sharing plants, because she's great and she'll take anything. So she gets spare tomatoes and she's got spare dahlias and stuff. They have a beautiful garden, so yeah, I know they're going to a good home. So yeah, so she got some of my dahlias. I don't have space. Nope, I'm not growing scissors. So you guys know the score. There is nothing fancy in this. You've seen me do it a million times. Prick the plant out, dunk it in a pot, give it fresh compost, add a label. Done. This is one of the things when you're a new gardener that is actually quite squary. It's quite squary, this. It's quite scary to do, is when you're handling baby plants, because you know all the stuff where you're getting told all the time to be careful and be gentle and don't damage the roots and blah 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 blah. But actually, what you learn over the years is you can handle them a bit rougher than you think, because you learn about how to handle them. What to touch, what not to touch. And also, you'll accidentally bash things, pull leaves off, etc. over the years, and you'll see them come back, so you learn. And the things you don't learn is when you say things like, I'll put them in pots, that'll take up less space. It's going to take up more space, Eli, but they need to go in pots. They need to be potted up. Now, this is the thing. There are a couple of reasons why potting up is a good thing. Number one, because it gives the plants the vital space and nutrition it needs to grow. If you want your plants to get bigger, you need to give them the space and the nutrition and things they need to get bigger. However, that very act of potting them on and disturbing the roots actually encourages your plant to grow. So all of you who are currently panicking about your little plants and they're really small and other people seem to be really big, they don't seem to be growing and coming on, have you potted them on? Because, trust me, once you pot them on, suddenly they'll take off. tender green beans this year. So it's beans now. I prefer to grow dwarf French beans. So French beans are the... So French beans then, the long slender pods that are kind of like pencil thin almost, and you eat them before they turn into actual beans in the pod, so you eat the whole thing. We love those. We eat them a lot, which is why we grow them. But I grow the dwarf varieties because it just works better for my garden, and because there's only 2 of us, so if we grow normal beans we always end up with far too many because they just produce so well, and let's be honest, they grow really high and I don't always get to them all to pick them in time. So these little guys are fantastic. Little dwarf plants produce like big plants. They're awesome, but they're small, easy to get to, don't take up a whole heap of space. And because I'm really focusing on space in my garden and getting the most out of my garden, like I did last year, these are going in the green stock. Perfect for containers, but I have grown them in the beds as well. Now, beans. I've got my root trainers, which I've grown my beans in for years and years and years, and I love it. It's perfect. But you don't need root trainers. You can grow your beans in a big pot. You can grow them in toilet roll tubes, recyclables, your old yogurt pots, whatever. You don't need fancy kit for growing things. And this is something that I've covered a lot on this channel. I have this kit because I've been gardening for quite a while now, and you collect stuff over the years. The same as quite a lot of stuff you'll see me use, I maybe use for a few years and then you won't see it again, because I've realised actually it was fine, but there's something better. So it goes. So you don't need root trainers. Now, I have earmarked a tier of the green stock for my beans. And I can get 3 of these dwarf plants in each tier. Sorry, I can get 3 of these dwarf plants in each pocket of the green stock. So, I'm going to get quite a bit going. Okay, so I'm sowing a little bit more than I need right now because I'm assuming not all of them will germinate. I'm not filling the tier at the moment because I'm going to sow some more later on, because these little guys will keep producing right through and I want to make the best of that. Now, like peas, it is the dried bean that you're sowing, as in peas are the dried pea that you sow. So yes, you can soak these the same as you do with your peas, but you don't need to. The reason people do that is it speeds up germination. Why am I all twisted around? Let me bring you around here. And I'm just popping 1 bean in each of these little modules. It's quite a large seed. If you look at it in terms of all the other seeds that you sow, it's quite a large one. So it will need a larger pot for growing in. I wouldn't recommend sowing more than 2 or 3 per pot if you're doing it that way. The good news is it's big enough that the ones I've dropped I can see and put back in the packet. Okay, so they're in there. Now, as I said before, don't get panicky about how deep do I do things. It's a larger seed, so you're going to want it to be deeper into the module or the pot. So I usually go by just simply down to the 2nd knuckle on my finger. Okay, so it's a way of doing it so that you don't have to be all panicking and actually measuring. Down to the 2nd knuckle. And just like the peas we sowed before, because these are dried, I'm going to give them a really good soak once it's covered in my potting mix. Now beans will grow quickly. Like peas, once they germinate they will grow quickly. There we go. Not difficult at all. There we go. That's the beans sown. That was easy. Settled in nice. One last job to do. See you next time, folks.